Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Free Thought Forum, brought to you by the friendly folks at Pennsylvania Nonbelievers. Now, you may have noted that our studio has moved for this current show, and we are now safely sequestered behind the wall of separation between church and state, which is where we should be. I'm your host for this evening, Doug Diggens. This evening's show, January the 13th, edition of our 2015 series, 2015 year series, brought to you by on the second and the fourth Tuesday of every month between the hours of 6 and 7 p.m. on York, PA, Comcast Cable 16. We stream this broadcast live all over the World Wide Web, all over the entire free world. I mean, right now in North Korea, they're probably pulling out their hair saying, how did he get here on our TV and on our computers? But we figured out a way, okay? My compatriot Jacob was supposed to be hosting tonight's show. However, he called in and he's down with a slight case of Ebola. Well, at least he said he feels like it. It's probably just a case of the flu, which is really going around. So get well soon, Jacob, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks, buddy. Now, this is a live call-in show where we welcome your comments and questions. The phone number will be displayed on your screen, and that's the one to call. I will be picking up any calls that we get. Tonight's show, we will discuss some thoughts and opinions about intelligent design as expressed by the most renowned and knowledgeable astrophysicist of modern times, Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson. But first, let us tell you about upcoming PAN meetings and events. And I will switch over. Regular meetings in York are the first Saturday of the month at the UUCY Carriage House at 925 South George Street in York at 10 a.m. to noon. Now, Saturday, January the 3rd, which you just missed, so never mind that, okay? But if you do wish to attend the next meeting, try 7th of February. Now, also, PAN's annual business meeting will be Saturday, 7th of March, 2015. At this meeting, members will vote at that time and elect members to the board of directors, because after all, this is a corporation, and it's a 501c3 organization, which means that we are tax exempt. So all your contributions that you may wish to give are tax free within the limits of the law. Members will vote at that time and elect members to the board of directors. The board of directors will then, in turn, elect the president, the vice president, our treasurer, and our recording secretary. it's important that we get as many of our members as we can to the annual business meeting, because, well, that's where your board of directors come from, and the people that help decide what we're going to do and the money we're going to spend. The next meeting is going to be the Harrisburg area PAN meeting, and that's on the second Thursday of each month at 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. at Isaac's Restaurant and Deli in Lemoyne. That will be on the 12th of February. Chambersburg area PAN meeting is on the third Tuesday of each month from 7 to 9 p.m. at the Supreme Buffet Hibachi Grill and Sushi, for those that like it. And that is on the 20th of January. Now, the Lewisburg area meeting meets on the third Sunday of each month from 6 to 7:30 at the Lewisburg Applebee's, and that'll be on the 18th of January. Now, you know, I'm kind of flipping the days around, but I'm going to blame that on our technical director, Big Jim Rumpelstiltskin, but who begged me not to do it this way, but I insisted anyway. But that was on Lewisburg is on the 18th of January. Lebanon area PAN meeting is the second Wednesday of each month from 7 to 9 p.m. at the Batdorf restaurant, and that's the 14th of January, which is tomorrow, the next one for the Lebanon area. Lancaster area PAN meets on the fourth Wednesday of each month from 6:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. at Isaac's Restaurant on the Mannheim Pike. That's on the 28th of January. The meeting is held in the back room as you enter the main door. You just sort of turn right and then make a left, and you'll see the two opening doors, and we have a room in there that's reserved just for PAN. So you don't have to buy any food, but it's appreciated when we do, because they kind of give us the room. I think that is all the meetings. Jim, did I miss any meetings or anything? Very good. Just take a little quickie sip here. It's kind of, in a way, a little disquieting, you know, when you don't have your co-host with you to sometimes, take up if you get a, a frog in your throat. Maybe I got the same thing that Jacob has, and it just hasn't hit me yet. But anyway, the title of this presentation is called The Perimeter of Ignorance. And that is a boundary where scientists face a choice: invoke a deity or continue the quest for knowledge. And this was presented by Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson and presented in the Natural History magazine in November of 2005. I'm sort of resurrecting it now. And this is what he stated. Writing in centuries past, many scientists felt compelled to wax poetic about cosmic mysteries and God's handiwork. Perhaps one should not be surprised at this. Most scientists back then, as well as many scientists today, identify themselves as spiritually devout. You know, that's when you say you're spiritual, it's kind of an easy out. Okay. But a careful reading of older texts, particularly those concerned with the universe itself, shows that the authors invoke divinity only when they reach the boundaries of their understanding. They appeal to a higher power only when staring into the ocean of their own ignorance. They call on God only from the lonely and precarious edge of incomprehension, where they feel certain about their explanations. However, God gets hardly a mention. Let's start at the top. Isaac Newton was one of the greatest intellects of the world has ever seen. I mean, his laws of motion and his universal law of gravitation, conceived in the mind of the 17th century, account for cosmic phenomenon that had eluded philosophers for millennium. Although those laws one could understand, I should say through those laws, one could understand the gravitational attraction of bodies in a system and thus come to understand orbits. You know, I mean, this all seems so simple now, but back then it wasn't. Newton's law of gravity enables you to calculate the force of attraction between any two objects. If you introduce a third object, then each one attracts the other two, and the orbits that they trace become much harder to compute. Yeah, it seems like it's getting a little bit more complicated, but I'll let up in a minute here because we don't want to bore everyone to death. But add another object, and then another, and soon you have the planets in our solar system. Earth and the Sun pull on each other, but Jupiter also pulls on Earth. Saturn pulls on Earth. Mars pulls on Earth. And Jupiter pulls on Saturn. Saturn pulls on Mars, and so on, ad nauseum. Well, Newton feared that all this pulling would render the orbits in the solar system unstable. Well, we're very thankful that they're not. His equations indicated that the planets should long ago have either fallen into the sun or flown the coop, leaving the sun, in either case, devoid of planets. Yet the solar system, as well as the larger cosmos, appeared to be the very same model of order and durability. So Newton, in his greatest work, the Principia, concludes that God must occasionally step in and make things right. Well, I think that's very nice of him. I mean, considering everything that goes wrong, it's nice if someone would step in occasionally and make things right, don't you think? I mean, so back to Niels. The 6 primary planets are revolved about the sun in circles concentric with the sun and with motions directed toward the same parts and almost in the same plane. But it is not to be conceived that mere mechanical causes could give birth to so many regular motions. This most beautiful system of the sun, planets and comets, could only proceed from the counsel and domination of an intelligent and powerful being. Now, in the Principia, Newton distinguishes between hypothesis and experimental philosophy and declares hypothesis, whether metaphysical or physical, whether of occult qualities or mechanical, have no place in experimental philosophy. What he wants is data, inferred from the phenomena. But in the absence of data, at the border between what he could explain and what he could only honor, the cause he could identify and those he could not, Newton rapturously invokes God. And it's still going on today. Now, eternal and infinite, omnipotent and omniscient, you know what I'm talking about. He, with a capital H, governs all things and knows all things that are or can be done. We know him, capital H, only by his most wise and excellent contrivances of things and final causes. We admire him for his perfections, but we reverence and adore him on account of his domination. But don't forget that the preachers today and all clergy also want you to fear him. I mean, that sort of goes hand in hand. You know, he loves you, but he'll kick the crap out of you if you disobey him. But he loves you anyway. Anyway, a century later, a French astronomer and mathematician, Pierre-Simon de Laplace. Any of you remember old Laplace transformations? Anyway, I digress. He confronted Newton's dilemma of unstable orbits head-on, rather than view the mysterious stability of the solar system as the unknowable work of God. Laplace declared it a scientific challenge, and in his multi-part masterpiece, Mécanique Céleste, or the mechanical celestial, the first volume of which appeared in 1798. God, that was actually a little bit before I was born, even, so that was a while ago. Laplace demonstrates that the solar system is stable over periods of time longer than Newton could predict. To do so, Laplace pioneered a new kind of mathematics called perturbation theory. Now, if I pronounced it wrong, don't get any wrong ideas. That isn't what I said. Anyway, which enabled him to examine the cumulative effects of many small forces. we often don't see cumulative effects of small forces in our daily lives, but they are there. Do we have a problem?
Levi.
Oh, I'm sorry. It looked like we had a technical problem there at first. Anyway, a new kind of mathematics called the perturbation theory, which enabled him to examine the cumulative effects of many small forces. Now, according to an oft-repeated but probably embellished account, it's funny how people like to, embellish things. When Laplace gave a copy of Mécanique Céleste to his physics literate friend, Napoleon Bonaparte, who would have thought that that little man was actually physics literate? But that was probably one of the things that made Napoleon a great a great person, a great ruler, and everything, and a great tactician too. Napoleon asked him what role God played in the construction and regulation of the heavens. "Sire," Laplace replied, "I have no need for that hypothesis." Besides, Laplace notwithstanding, plenty of scientists besides Newton have called on God, or the gods, wherever their comprehension fades to ignorance. They do a lot of shuffling. Okay, and no one likes to admit they don't know an answer to a question, except for maybe atheists and non-believers, and they're quite comfortable with that answer because they know that it is an excuse to go on researching and trying to find the right answer, rather than just look in a Bible that's thousands of years old, or any other document, before they even had a word science there, and try to find the true knowledge that is needed to answer a question. Now, consider the 2nd century AD Alexandrian astronomer Ptolemy, armed with a description, but no real understanding of what the planets were doing up there. He could not contain his religious fervor. He said, "I know that I am mortal by nature and ephemeral, but when I trace at my pleasure the windings to and fro of the heavenly bodies, I no longer touch earth with my feet. I stand in the presence of Zeus himself and take my fill of ambrosia." No matter what name you have, there's always a God. And when you say one, there's only one God. Yeah, there's only one God to one particular person, and they can be whoever they want them to be. Or consider the 17th century Dutch astronomer Christian Huygens, whose achievements included constructing the first working pendulum clock and discovering the rings of Saturn. Now, it may sound like a ho-hum achievement, but pendulum clock at the time was quite amazing. But he also discovered the rings of Saturn. Now, in his charming book, The Celestial Worlds Discovered, posthumously published in 1696, most of the opening chapter celebrates all that was then known of planetary orbits, shapes and sizes, as well as the planet's relative brightness and presumed rockiness. Yeah, I imagine that we've done that in the past, looking up at the moon, and we see this, the surface without any telescope, and probably look up and say, gee, I wonder if it's a rocky, excuse me, well, like it is. I mean, let's face it, the astronauts brought back a whole bunch of rocks from the moon. And of course, I also considered the shapes, the sizes, as well as the planet's relative brightness and presumed craters and I've said the word rockiness. The book even includes fold-out charts, unlike Playboy, that illustrate the structure of the solar system. God is absent from this discussion, even though a mere century earlier, before Newton's achievements, planetary orbits were supreme mysteries. God must have done it. If he didn't know, God must have done it. It's the answer for everything. You could go to a Bible school, seminary school, and I'm pretty sure that I could pass the final exam because the answer to everything is God. So I just, if he's got 100 questions, I just write down God 100 times, and there it goes. I just graduated. Now, celestial worlds also brims with speculations about life in the solar system. And that's where Huygens raises questions to which he has no answer. He didn't know what we know today, and that's where he mentions the biological conundrums of the day, such as the origin of life's complexity. And sure enough, because 17th century physics was more advanced than 17th century biology, Huygens invoked the hand of God only when he talked about biology. Excuse me, I've got a tooth that's worked its way loose there, so it's a little disconcerting to me. Anyway, if it falls out of my face, I'm going to talk with a big hole in my front of my face anyway, like I did a few months back when the same thing happened with the same tooth, like that. I got to get another dentist, I swear. Anyway, I suppose nobody will deny but that there's somewhat more of a contrivance, somewhat more of miracle in the production and growth of plants and animals than in the lifeless heaps of inanimate bodies. For the finger of God and the wisdom of divine providence is in them much more clearly manifested than in the other order, Today's secular philosophers call that kind of divine invocation God of the gaps. I'm sure that you've heard of it at some time or another, but keep in mind the God of the gaps. This is where God can explain all the knowledge of the gaps in your knowledge, which comes in handy because there never has been a shortage of gaps in people's knowledge. As reverent as Newton, Huygens, and other great scientists of earlier centuries may have been, they were also empiricists. They did not retreat from the conclusions their evidence forced them to draw. And when their discoveries conflicted with prevailing articles of faith, which they did most of the time, they upheld the discoveries. Now, that doesn't mean it was easy. Sometimes they met fierce opposition, as did Galileo. I mean, how many centuries did it take the a Pope, the Vatican, to admit that, hey, he was right all along? He had to defend his telescopic evidence against formidable objections drawn from both Scripture and, worst of all, common sense. Boy, I'll tell you, common sense can really get in the way sometimes. Common sense can get in the way of religion if you let it, or you can say that something makes sense in religion when really it doesn't. Anyway, Galileo clearly distinguished the role of religion from the role of science. To him, religion was the service of God and the salvation of souls, whereas science was the source of exact observations and demonstrated truths. In a long, famous, bristly letter written in the summer of 1615 to the Grand Duchess Christina of Tuscany, but like so many epistles of the day, it actually circulated amongst the literati. He quotes in his own defense an unnamed yet sympathetic church official saying that the Bible tells you how to go to heaven, not how the heavens go. Think about that there. The Bible tells you how to go to heaven, but not how the heavens go. I can think of a few televangelists that could do with imparting that knowledge. Anyway, the letter to the Duchess leaves no doubt about where Galileo stood on the literal word of the Holy Writ. In expounding the Bible, if one were always to confine oneself to the unadorned grammatical meaning, one might fall into error. No kidding. That nothing physical which demonstrations prove to us ought to be called in question, much less condemned. Yet, upon the testimony of biblical passages which may have some different meaning beneath their words, I do not feel obligated to believe that the same God who has endowed us with senses, reason, and intellect has intended us to forego their use. I do not feel obligated to believe that the same God who has endowed us with sense, reason, and intellect has intended for us to forego their use. Interesting. Okay. A rare exception among scientists, Galileo saw the unknown as a place to explore, rather than an eternal mystery controlled by the hand of God. And for that, I'm very thankful, because that has come down through the ages, and we would still be in the dark ages being ruled by the hand of God. Excuse me while I take just a quickie sip. As long as the celestial sphere was generally regarded as the domain of the divine, the fact that mere mortals could not explain its workings could safely be cited as proof of a higher wisdom and the power of God. But beginning in the 16th century, the work of Copernicus, Kepler, Galileo, Newton, not to mention Maxwell, Heisenberg, you know, he's the guy that was a little uncertain about a lot of things, Einstein, and everyone else who discovered the fundamental laws of physics. They provided rational explanations for an increasing range of phenomena. Not God did it. Little by little, the universe was subjected to the methods and tools of science and became a demonstrably knowable place. And wouldn't we all rather be in that place than something we know not of? Okay. Then, in what amounts to a stunning yet unheralded philosophical inversion, unheralded of ecclesiastical and scholars began to declare that it was the laws of physics themselves that served as the proof of the wisdom and power of God. It's so nice when you can just twist things the way that you want. If you can't get the answer exactly right, then, well, change the question. One popular theme, the 17th and 18th century, was the clockwork universe. I suppose not too much different than a clockwork orange, for those of you that are old enough to understand that. But anyway, an ordered, rational, predictable mechanism fashioned and run by God and his physical laws that he also invented. So everything that he did would work the way that he wanted it to. The early telescopes, which all relied on visible light, did little to undercut the image of an ordered system. The moon revolved around the Earth. Earth and other planets rotated on the axis and revolved around the sun. Ho hum. The stars shone. The nebulae floated freely in space. Like that. Not until the 19th century was it evident that visible light is just one band of a broad spectrum of electromagnetic radiation. Wouldn't you love to be able to see like that? The band that human beings just happen to see. Now, in the past, there have been various people that have waxed philosophic about the invention of the eye by God, and what a wonderful thing it is, and it couldn't have been by accident. But really, our eyes are crummy. We can't see, a hundredth of the stuff, the phenomenon that's out there, because it's beyond the range, the electromagnetic range of our eyes that human beings just happen to see. Infrared, excuse me, was discovered in 1800. Ultraviolet in 1801. Radio waves in 1888. X-rays in 1895, and gamma rays in 1900. Now, decade by decade, in the following century, new kinds of telescopes came into use, fitted with detectors that could see these formerly invisible parts of the electromagnetic spectrum. Like, all the stuff that we had been missing up till now, that we never even knew existed. Now, astrophysicists began to unmask the true character of the universe. And it didn't really, the specter of God didn't fit quite so easily into it. Turns out that some celestial bodies give off more light in the invisible bands of the spectrum than in the visible. And the invisible light picked up by the new telescopes showed that mayhem abounds in the cosmos, monstrous gamma-ray bursts, deadly pulsars, matter-crushing gravitational fields, matter-hungry black holes that flay their bloated stellar neighbors, newborn stars, igniting within pockets of collapsing gas. For those of you that missed it, if it comes on again, you have got to see Cosmos, and it's narrated by the same gentleman, Neil deGrasse Tyson. And if you compare that to some of the old books that were written in the 17, 18, 1900s, you see how far we actually have come. And as our ordinary optical telescopes got bigger and better, more mayhem emerged. Galaxies that collide and cannibalize each other. Explosions of supermassive stars, chaotic stellar and planetary orbits. Our own cosmic neighborhood, the inner solar system, turned out to be just a shooting gallery full of rogue asteroids and comets that collide with planets from time to time. I imagine if the ancient astronomers, even like Galileo, realized everything that was out there and everything that was coming toward us, they probably wouldn't have gone outside to use their telescopes. But now we know. And we know really what a dangerous place the universe is. But coupled with that, and in defense of that, the laws of chance they're on our side, and the chances of us being hit are relatively low. Okay. Occasionally, they've even wiped out stupendous masses of Earth's flora and fauna. See, remember the ancient beasts called dinosaurs? Like that? They're thought to be due to a collision. The evidence all points to the fact that we occupy not a well-ordered or a well-mannered clockwork universe, but a destructive, violent, and hostile zoo. It's, you know, if you get into the minds of science fiction writers, you know, they've got a field day. I mean, nothing that they write about today you could really say was impossible. Every day goes by and we can look back on 100-year-old or more science fiction stories that were everyone laughed at the time, but now are very, very possible. Now, of course, Earth can be bad for your health too. On land, grizzly bears want to maul you. In the oceans, sharks want to eat you. Snowdrifts can freeze you. I don't know whether or not they want to, but they can freeze you. Deserts dehydrate you. Earthquakes bury you. Volcanoes incinerate you. Viruses can infect you. Parasites suck your vital fluids. Cancer can take over your body, and congenital diseases force an early death. Gee, isn't that happy? But even if you have the good luck to be healthy, a swarm of locusts could develop your crops. A tsunami could wash away your family, or a hurricane could blow apart your town. It just goes on and on. Are you sure you want to get up tomorrow morning, get out of bed? But we've lived with it for all these years. So the universe wants to kill us all. But let's ignore that complication for a minute. Many, perhaps countless questions hover at the front lines of science. In some cases, answers have eluded our best minds of our species for decades or even centuries. And in contemporary America, the notion that a higher intelligence is the single answer to all enigmas has been enjoying a resurgence. This present-day version of God of the Gaps goes by a fresh name. Yeah, you may have heard it before. Intelligent design. Of course, there's not much intelligence there, but they call it intelligence design. The term suggests that some entity endowed with a mental capacity far greater than the human mind can muster. Even my technical man Jim or myself can't muster that much capacity. Created or enabled all things in the physical world that we cannot explain through scientific methods. An interesting hypothesis. But why confine ourselves to things too wondrous or intricate for us to understand, whose existence and attributes we then credit to a supernatural intelligence? Instead, why not tally all those things whose design is so clunky, goofy, impractical, or unworkable that they reflect the absence of intelligence? We know there's a lot of absence of intelligence. Take the human form. We eat, drink, and breathe through the same hole in the head, and so, despite Henry J. Heimlich's eponymous maneuver, choking is the fourth leading cause of unintentional injury death in the United States. How about drowning? The fifth leading cause. Water covers almost 3/4 of Earth's surface. Yet we are land creatures. Submerge your head for just a few minutes and you die. Or take our collection of useless body parts. What good is the pinky toenail? How about the appendix, which stops functioning shortly after childhood and thereafter serves only as a source of... It did fall out. Son of a gun. Okay.
Useless parts.
Yeah. Anyway, talk about, see? Useless parts. Useful parts, too, can be problematic. I happen to like my knees, but nobody ever accused them of being well protected from bumps and bangs. These days, people with problem knees can get them surgically replaced. As for pain-prone spine, it may be a while before someone finds a way to swap that out, although, you know, it would be nice. How about the silent killers? Ooh, I hate those. I hate those because they're lurking around here, waiting for me. High blood pressure. Oh, gosh, I'm going to take that thing. Colon cancer. Ooh. And diabetes. Ooh, yeah. Well, forget any of my sweets. Tens of thousands of deaths in the U.S. every year, but it's possible not to know you're afflicted until your coroner tells you so. Wouldn't it be nice if we had a built-in biogauge to warn us of such dangers? I know I wouldn't have eaten half as much bacon when I was younger, you know, if I'd known what it does to you. Like that. No, I'm lying through my teeth. When I die, I want the smell of bacon on my breath, and you know, it clogging my my veins. But wouldn't it not to warn us of such a... Bleh, I can't talk. So, even cheap cars, after all, have engine gauges. And what comedian, designer configured the region between our legs? An entertainment complex built around a sewage system. The eye is often held up as a marvel of biological engineering. To the astrophysicist, though, it's only a so-so detector. A better one would be much more sensitive to dark things in the sky and to all invisible parts of the spectrum, like dark matter and dark energy. How much more breathtaking sunsets would be if we could see ultraviolet and infrared. How useful would it be if at a glance we could see every source of microwaves in the environment, or know which radio station transmitters were active? Let's see it. How helpful would it be if we could spot police radar detectors at night? Oh yeah, love that. Think how easy it would be to navigate an unfamiliar city if we, like birds, could always tell which way was north because of the magnetite in our heads. Think how much better off we'd be if we had gills as well as lungs, and how much more productive if we had 6 arms instead of 2. And if we had 8, we could safely drive a car while simultaneously talking on a cell phone, changing the radio station, applying makeup, sipping a drink, and scratching our left ear. Stupid design could fuel a movement into itself, but must not be nature's default. But it's ubiquitous, yet people seem to enjoy thinking that our bodies, minds, and even our universe represents pinnacles of form and reason. Maybe it's a good antidepressant to think so, but it's not science. Not now, not in the past, not ever. Another practice that isn't science is embracing ignorance, yet it is fundamental to the philosophy of intelligent design. I don't know what this is. I don't know how it works. It's too complicated for me to figure out. It's too complicated for any human to figure out, so it must be the byproduct of a higher intelligence, God. What do you do with that line of reasoning? Do you just cede the solving of problems to someone smarter than you, someone who's not even human? Do you tell students to pursue only questions with easy answers? Yes, they would want to do that. There may be a limit to what the human mind can figure out about our universe, but how presumptuous it would be for me, Neil deGrasse Tyson, to claim that if I can't solve a problem, neither can another person who has ever lived or ever will be born. Suppose Galileo and Laplace had felt that way. Better yet, what if Newton had not? He might not have solved Laplace's problem a century earlier, making it possible for Laplace to cross the next frontier of ignorance. Science is a philosophy of discovery. Our apologies, ladies and gentlemen. We had a couple of technical difficulties there, but now to continue. As Dr. Tyson points out, science is a philosophy of discovery. Intelligent design is a philosophy of ignorance. You cannot build a program of discovery on the assumption that nobody is smart enough to figure out the answer to a problem. Once upon a time, people identified the god Neptune as the source of storms at sea. Today we call these storms hurricanes. We know when and where they start. We know what drives them. We know what mitigates their destructive power. And anyone who has studied global warming can tell you what makes them worse. The only people who still call hurricanes acts of God are the people who write insurance forms, and usually to deny your claim. To deny or erase the rich, colorful history of scientists and other thinkers who have invoked divinity in their work should be intellectually dishonest. Surely there's an appropriate place for intelligent design to live in the academic landscape. How about in the history of religion? How about philosophy or psychology? The one place it doesn't belong is in the science classroom. If you are not swayed by academic arguments, consider the financial consequences. Allow intelligent design into science textbooks, lecture halls, and laboratories, and the cost to the frontier of scientific discovery, the frontier that drives the economies of the future, would be incalculable. I, Tyson, don't want students who could make the next major breakthrough in renewable energy sources or space travel to have been taught that anything that they don't understand and that nobody yet understands is divinely constructed and therefore beyond their intellectual capacity. The day that that happens, Americans will just sit in awe of what we don't understand, while we watch the rest of the world boldly go where no mortal has gone before. That was authored by Neil deGrasse Tyson. A parting word from me, Doug Diggens. While we are in fact mortal, we are also incredibly complex biological learning machines. And I borrowed a line from the movie Battlestar Galactica, The Plan, that sums up what I have sort of dreamed about for most of my life while reading sci-fi books and setting my imagination free. I don't want to be human. I want to see gamma rays. I want to hear X-rays, and I want to smell dark matter. I want to reach out with something other than these prehensile pores and feel the solar wind of a supernova flowing over me. I am a machine, and I could know much more. Bonsoir, Madame et Monsieur, from the Free Thought Forum, and in keeping with the theme of our show title and the recent attacks on everyone's liberty and freedom of speech in Paris, Je suis Charlie. We are with you. Good night.